Here he is, the most famous man from Oliver, British Columbia. 100% Hockey, the podcast with Darren Millard, and of course, former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, Jon Shannon. How are you? Happy St. Patty's.
Yeah, happy St. Patty's to you guys too. It's one of those days though that I'm sure Canuck fans would rather have a win than wear green, right?
What did you make of the Canucks weekend?
Well, I think we said this last week. This homestand to me was the most important homestand of the season. They needed to come close to sweeping the homestand in addition to the game in Calgary, and then they go and lose to two teams that I think they're better than. I think they're better than Montreal. I think they're better than Utah, and they lost two games that they should have won. And so they backed themselves into another corner as they face the best team in hockey tomorrow night, and then go on that horrendous 6-game road trip. It's a daunting task now. So last night was, well, I heard Jeff after the game. So last night was as frustrating, I think, as you've seen in a long time with the Canucks, with their fans, with inability to score goals, not going to the front of the net enough. It's a tough time right now.
Well, and we know that they've struggled to score goals pretty much all season long, and then they get 6 minutes power play time in the third period in a one-goal game. Now, they had already scored a power play goal earlier in the game, so I kind of felt like Rick Tocchet was of mixed minds. Like, it's hard to get to the podium and carve your power play when it had scored, but man, they needed one more there on those opportunities in the third.
And it was symptomatic, I think, Jeff, you're right, of what we've seen all season long. Where was the team speed that was so effective for most of the season last year? Where is their aggressive forecheck? Where are they in the middle of the ice? So much is on the periphery. So much is on the periphery that you could see it and hear it in Rick's voice after the game, how frustrated he was that, things just aren't clicking, and he doesn't understand why they're not clicking.
Well, let me ask you, John, it's our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question today. What's the main reason behind their offensive struggles? Do you think it's a lack of personnel, lack of execution, or the coach's system?
Well, wasn't it the same coach's system last year? So, to me, it's just lack of execution. To me, this is on the players. And mildly frustrating is that I think Elias Pettersson is playing better, but not many other guys are. Jake DeBrusk has got some good goal numbers, but where has Jake been the last little while? That's frustrating. I know Dakota Joshua has gone through a lot this season, and I respect that. But he's not near as competitive as he was last season, when, in my mind, they had the best third line, or one of the best third lines in hockey, with Garland and Bluger. So, at a certain point, you go and say, well, where is this team? And it's funny because I spent some time with Jim Rutherford early in the season, and he said something rather interesting at that point to him, and he said that our guy, we're not sure how much our guys learned from last season, how hard it is to play, and people know how good the Canucks were last year, and nobody's given them a night off. So from that perspective, it's just, I think they've been called on the carpet by the other teams in this league, and they haven't been able to perform at that level.
When you talked about Montreal in here the other night, that top line for the Habs takes over, and that night, Rick Tocchet just throws his hands in the air after the game and says, we can't match that. It wasn't necessarily the case last night against Utah, but chips were down, third period. Logan Cooley comes through with a goal. He's one of their guys. He's one of their goal scorers there. And so that's happened way too often to the Canucks this season, is that better players on the other side have tipped games in their favor.
And both of those teams in Montreal and in Utah have been horrendous for years. Horrendous, let's be honest. They have not been near the playoffs. But they have finally drafted well, and there are some bright young stars on both of those teams. That Utah team with guys like Cooley and Dylan Gunther and Clayton Keller's been around a long time, and then the deals that they made on their blue line and getting Sergachev out of Tampa, they're pointed in the right direction. They seem to be focused the same way, and I can't see that and say that today for the Canucks. They're not playing as in sync. They're not playing as a team. So to me, to answer the poll question simply, it's pure and utter execution because they have the talent.
Let's and this is not meant to dismiss everything we saw last night. But Philip Chytil out of this lineup is consequential. And that is another scary hit and another scary injury, a concussion for Philip Chytil. And we all know that's one of the reasons why the New York Rangers made this player available. It's not that they didn't like him. It's that they were worried about the next hit and the next concussion. Do you think they have the horses, if Chytil's going to miss some time here, John, to get it done offensively and still make the playoffs with the lineup you see minus Chytil?
Well, you're and correct me if I'm wrong, you're going from Chytil to Lettermacki, correct? That's what you're doing?
Well, you've got Suter, you've got Bluger, you've got Nils Amon down center ice. Of course, Suter can flip over and play wings.
Well, it
was Chytil out, Lettermacki is in terms of the straight roster substitution. But yes,
it's going to be hard. It is going to be hard. But you need the big horses pulling the big carriage. You need your stars doing more. I don't know what more Quinn Hughes can do. I mean, let's face it. Quinn Hughes has come back. We know he's not 100%, and he has played, I think, admirably, and been a difference maker. And I mean, without him, there wouldn't have been the win in Calgary. So that's a fact. Quite frankly, I really don't have any issue with the defense. Execution, maybe they make mistakes once, so I don't have any issue there. But this is all on the forwards. I honestly don't know what more Connor Garland can do either, because he's all in. He's tried his best to do what he can, but things are limited. Teddy Bluger's a third line guy. He's not a top six guy. He's a third line guy, so it's going to be difficult. Let's hope that Chytil can get back a little sooner than people expect. Maybe not against Winnipeg, but maybe he can be ready for the road trip.
Well, of course, they go to Madison Square early in the trip. I'm sure that's a game that he wants to be a part of and look forward to, but health before anything. So, he needs to get clearance, and we'll see. What did you make of the hit? I mean, Kiefer Sherwood had some pretty pointed comments after the game last night about Jason Dickinson and the fact that he didn't face the music. I guess for me, it was just, it's a 6-2 hockey game. Time is kind of winding down. It just felt like an unnecessary hit on Chytil by Dickinson.
I think that's fair. I mean, the last 6 minutes of that game were unnecessary. Let's face it. With everything that's going on, just to get Connor Bedard another 10-minute misconduct. It was. And I must admit, we had George Paris on our show, 2 weeks ago. And he went through the explanation of how they get to a point of supplemental discipline. And after listening to George, I understand that everybody in Vancouver would be angry with the hit, but it did not reach that level. It did not reach the level. Was it cheap? Yeah, it was cheap. If I'm Sherwood, I'm ticked. Absolutely. But it did not reach that criteria of being suspendable. The way the rules of the game of hockey are written right now. Now, perhaps that'll be a discussion point at the managers' meetings this weekend. I doubt it, but there's always that type of thing. It was unfortunate that in the end, Chytil hit his head on the dasher. That's the bottom line, and I look forward to the next time that, the Canucks and the Blackhawks play to see if there's a little bit of revenge in mind. If some of those guys that want to do revenge for the Canucks are in the lineup or on this roster next year.
John, 4 teams separated now by 2 points. The Canucks still above the playoff bar for the time being, but that can change as early as tonight. Calgary starting an Eastern road trip of its own in Toronto. Where did the St. Louis Blues come from? They're the hottest team in hockey since the Four Nations face-off. They're 9-2-2 in their last 13 hockey games. And I don't know if people have looked at their schedule. Their next 6, 3 of them against Nashville, 1 against Chicago, and they got the game on Thursday night against the Vancouver Canucks. Like, this right now feels like all of the pendulum has swung completely in the St. Louis Blues direction.
You know, and so they have 15 games left, and they have more home games available than any of those 4 other teams. Now, they haven't been very good at home, but they've been better at home of late. The players made a statement to Doug Armstrong. You know, they went on that California swing, and Jordan Binnington said it after, I think, the game in Los Angeles, said, we like this team. We want to stay together. Give us one last chance, basically. And that's what he's done. He's given them a chance. I mean, how many times could he have traded Braden Shen at the deadline and decided not to? So from that perspective, they are playing well. By the way, Joel Hofer, their second goaltender, has played very well in situations as well. It's not just all on Jordan Binnington. So from that perspective, you're right. They might at this point be the, you know, you talk about how good the teams in the West are: Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, St. Louis. Right now, St. Louis might be the 4th best team in the Western Conference the way they're playing. And it would not surprise me, the way things turn out, that the Blues are the wild card team at this point. They would not surprise me.
Binnington's still wearing the cape from Four Nations, I think.
Mark it down, Mike. St. Patty's Day, when he lost his faith in the Vancouver Canucks. We ask him weekly about.
But I told you this. I told you this homestand was important.
You did.
The homestand was important, and particularly with this awful road trip coming up. You know, I mean, you're going to play Winnipeg at home Tuesday night, and you're going to end the 6-game road trip. Guess where? In Winnipeg.
I know.
You know, I mean, and Winnipeg's the best team in hockey right now. Winnipeg is the best team in hockey.
And they saved Connor Hellebuck last night. They went with Comrie in Seattle to make sure that Connor was fresh and ready for the Canucks here on Tuesday night.
Well, I was going to say, John, you do a lot of Jets games. So what's clicking for them? What makes them so good? What are the Canucks up against tomorrow? In advance of this game against St. Louis on Thursday, which suddenly has greater stakes. But,
well, you're going to hate it, but Luke Schen's made a difference. So he's really let Dylan Sandberg blossom on their second defense pair. Josh Morrissey is playing lights out. He played 28 minutes last night in Seattle. They still have the best line in hockey in Chytil, Velarde, and Kyle Connor, who scored an unbelievable goal last night. Cole Perfetti has taken a lot longer to develop than people expected him to, but he's been a difference maker. You know, they've taken a ton of pressure off of Adam Lowry because of the depth of this team. So the Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton line can be the best shutdown line in the game. The other thing, when you look at the Jets, and is Scott Arniel has been so consistent. I mean, I would tell you guys that he's changed lines less than a dozen times in 68 games. There's no line juggling. I mean, it's you go and you look at the depth chart, and it's the same lines all the time. Same lines all the time.
Wow.
Vladimir Namestnikov between Nick Ehlers and Cole Perfetti is the second line, and they've been really good. You know, so it has been remarkable, the consistency of the team, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that they have not had to alter any of their lineup very often.
I'm processing this. 12 line changes in a year. 12 line changes in a period, basically.
Right. What would you guys report on at practice if they weren't changing lines, Jeff?
The other thing too is when you mentioned Kyle Connor, John. Canuck fans remember first period natural hat trick Kyle Connor the last time they faced the Canucks.
Well, it's a bone of contention in Winnipeg still. Kyle Connor did not dress for the Americans in the final game of the Four Nations face-off.
He's fifth in NHL scoring.
I know.
And they put Chris Kreider in instead.
Oh my God!
you're
And
going-
we saw him last. They didn't take Clayton Keller either, who has
Right.
surged since his omission from the U.S. team. Lastly, is there anything you want to see done at the or recommended at the GM's meetings, whether it's goaltender interference or?
Well, I think that's the number one thing. There has to be a level of consistency with goaltender interference. I was around hockey night in 1999 when we went through the Brett Hull incident, toe in the crease in Buffalo, that people in Buffalo still yell about. But there seems to be, outside of the situation room, there seems to be a lack of understanding of what is or isn't goaltender interference. And there needs to be clarity. That, to me, that's the only issue facing the National Hockey League right now, is how to create some subjective standard for goaltender interference that everyone understands. Because other than that, I think the game's in pretty good shape.
Yeah. Good stuff, John. Well, thank you for this, sir. Appreciate you switching days on us for this week. We will catch up next Tuesday.
Well,
sir.
I'll do anything just to avoid Blake after he yelled at me last week.
Yeah, it's true. They got into it last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kinder,
Yeah.
friendlier co-host today.
I was going to say, yeah.
Well, guy from Kamloops. How can you blame him? Come on.